Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be diving in and taking a look at a time lapse of the new Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord campaign on the beta patch 1.2 because they recently changed a bunch about the auto resolve, actually having the AI take into account terrain features. This should in theory make cavalry way worse because there's a lot of forests on the map, and when battles are fought in forest they receive a 30% debuff. Same with archer heavy factions as well, they get a reduction. The snow also affects factions in auto resolve, so really a lot has changed. I'm very interested to see how this does shake out over about a 10-year period. So we're going to be diving in. I'm going to be going ahead and playing through at a super ultra speed. I'll speed it up and then stopping maybe every 3 to 4 years and seeing how things have been affected. I think that personally the battalions are going to make a pretty strong showing. They've been getting, I think personally the battalions are going to make a very strong showing in this time lapse because they basically get all the bonuses. Cavalry performs way worse against them. Their archers do pretty decent on open ground, and then in forest they get a little bit of debuff, but so does the enemy. I'm also expecting the Sturgeons to do fairly decent as well. Previously, Battalion and Sturgio are the two factions that got beaten up the most, whereas all the other factions are pretty well balanced. However, I think Sturgio are going to make a pretty surprising show in this one because the snow goes ahead and debuffs basically everybody else, and the infantry performs pretty well on flat terrain, which Sturgio has a lot of it, and the AI will be getting debuffed by the snow, the forest, and also everything else that does happen up here in the north in the temperament of the weather. Be sure to let me know what factions you guys think are going to go ahead and rise to power and become the strongest. Obviously, before watching the video, it'll be interesting to see, you know, what your guys' opinions are, and then obviously to see if you guys were right or wrong at the end of the video. But let's just dive in and see how this all shakes out. So after only a year, we are already starting to see some pretty interesting developments on 1.2. As you guys can see, Legarta has been taken by the Sturgeons. I don't really know how they made it down here, but they did, which was pretty cool of them. We also do have the battalions pushing into Sturgeon territory. Varcheg was taken by the Valandians and is now rebelled in turn, which gives us the Sturgeons a bit of time to actually come back. Outside of that, the battalions have also managed to actually push down here into the south, taking 2 of the Western Empire castles. It seems like they're the ones getting beaten up as of right now. Over off into the east, the north has really pushed up here as well. The Southern Empire has been able to take this castle, but besides that, nothing else has dramatically changed on the campaign map. The Aserai haven't been able to secure themselves a stronger foothold anywhere and have actually lost a settlement to the Southern Empire. So really the major winners as of right now, a year into this time lapse, is the Sturgeons being able to take Legarta. It's a very rich city, but they did in turn lose their capital. And honestly, the battalions are really benefiting from this new patch. So let's go ahead and play maybe 2 more years to see how this develops. so we are now 3 years on, and a lot actually happened. Even though it doesn't look dramatically different, there was, again, if you were watching the time lapse, lots of back and forth, settlements being taken, then recaptured, and then another faction would pounce on a war and go ahead and conquer their settlements. For example, down here is a good example. The Aserai had pushed all the way up here into the north as they were taking advantage of the Kuzites pushing deep into Empire territory. They had conquered Apulia and they had also conquered Maizen all in one fell swoop, but they were losing down here in the south to the Aserai. And then when the Northern Empire took that back, the Southern Empire then pounced on the Aserai, overextending into the north and conquering this land. We can see as well that the Aserai were able to go ahead and conquer this away from the Western Empire. The Western Empire has lost the Garter to the Valandians, but it does look like they're about to take it back. However, this castle is now under siege. The Valandians have pushed into the Battanian lands, but are about to lose that castle. Somehow, Varcheg, the rebels of Varcheg, have managed to form their own independent kingdom, which is actually really cool. I'd love to see more kingdoms rise to power like this. I think that'd be such a cool addition. The Battanians are holding pretty strong up here in the north. I think they're really benefiting from the new changes, and the Sturgeons are definitely struggling. Amor was taken as well at some point. However, they have now since taken that back. They have also lost this castle up in the north, but again are in the process of taking it back. So I think so far there are a lot of kingdoms that are definitely showing their worth. Britannia in previous patches were getting absolutely wrecked, but are now seemingly holding their own. And I've seen them take stuff like Sargot before in other playthroughs, so they're definitely a strong faction. Sturgeons, however, are definitely still struggling. Let's play for like another 2-3 years. I'm interested to see if the Sturgeons can make a comeback or if they are just going to kind of like crumble internally, and also obviously see how all the current conquers continue on. So let's go ahead, speed things up again, and dive back into it. So here we are 10 years after the start of the game, and this is probably as far as any player would make it in their campaign unless they're going absolutely goblin mode and to the very bitter end, and things ended very differently to what I thought was going to happen. The Sturgeons, as you guys can see up here in the north, have been absolutely battered. They have what, two cities and like 2 castles, 3 castles, 4 castles. Actually, that's not that bad, but you know, if we look to what they would have had, yeah, it's a severe reduction in their power, and the Kuzites have just conquered all of this, which is so surprising because this terrain is basically forest, it's snow, it's all stuff that should debuff them in the auto-resolve, and yet they've still been able to conquer a fair amount of territory up there in the north. In the south, I think the strongest the strongest Empire faction definitely is the Southern. They've been able to conquer castles down here in the south, really secure themselves. A few other castles have like changed hands, but really not much conflict between the Empire factions or whatsoever, which is surprising. I thought there would be more. If we go off to the west as well, you can see the Western Empire conquering 2 bits of territory from the Azurai. Nothing really to write home about though. They're still conquering nonetheless, which I guess is pretty decent. Also, you'll notice as well down here the Sturgeons actually have managed to somehow convince a Kuzite lord halfway across the map to join them. This is a Kuzite flag, a Kuzite faction, and yet they've abandoned the Kuzites for the Sturgeons, which is very surprising. Over here as well, you can see that the Vlandians have probably done the second best out of all the factions. They've been able to conquer a very nice amount of territory, all of these castles down this entire border. It's going to keep them very defensible. Conquered a castle over here, and of course have conquered this as well. So overall, I think they've done pretty good. You can also see as well, yeah, this clan has actually abandoned Sturgis. So it's interesting to see these clans actually switch sides from one to the other, not necessarily, you know, factions losing. I guess maybe they can convince a faction to join them, and it's a smart idea to put them in power in that, you know, Sturgeon cultural settlement. Something as well I definitely noticed whilst playing this, or whilst watching this unfold, is that rebellions happen quite often after a settlement has just been taken. And I feel like that's a bit lame, right? The settlement's just been sacked by an opposing occupying force, and then all of a sudden it rebels. I don't know, that seems a bit weird to me. And there was a lot of back and forth. Like, the map hasn't changed dramatically, I guess, besides probably the Volandians and the Kuzites. The Kuzites making a big imprint up here in the north. But besides that, the map hasn't like changed loads. There hasn't been like one supreme empire faction. There was a lot of back and forth, as you guys will see in the time-lapse. Settlements were taken and then taken back, and then lost, and then taken, and then lost, and then taken. And it was hard for one side to really secure. And you definitely would have noticed as well that, you know, as that was going on, like, other factions would pounce on wars and try and conquer lands whilst armies were away. That was something that was pretty cool to see. However, I don't know if I like this outcome. I really like, you know, when factions do start to snowball on the map. I would like to see one empire faction reign supreme, you know, whether it's through in the future when they add diplomacy to the game, maybe the empires can like unify into one great power, or maybe there's like big civil wars or factions take over one another. But I like to see these big power blocks form up and become these like big baddies of Calradia. I think that would be really cool, and I would like to see, you know, more factions kind of taking the initiative and factions crumbling. The previous point about, you know, it was cool seeing that rebellion faction rising in Varchek and holding for a pretty large, you know, about 3-4 years. Super cool. I would love to see actual factions emerging and forming kingdoms. How cool would it be if like half the kingdoms at the end of the game weren't actually there originally, and they were like newly formed from destroyed or disgraced lords? I think that'd be dope. Yeah, that was the 10-year time lapse. If you guys want to see maybe like a 100-year time lapse, I can definitely do that, where I just let it run, and I probably only do like an intro and an outro to it to see how things develop. Comment on your comment that you put at the beginning of the video to let me know if you were right or wrong on the outcome, and if you were surprised by it. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.